The Middle East is mysterious and compelling. It's diverse and complex. It's also confusing and controversial. And it's absolutely amazing. The Middle East is the cradle of civilization and boasts early settlements and ruins going back thousands of years. But for a region that's relatively small, it's blessed with a stunning assortment of mesmerizing lands and magical sites. From ancient civilizations to bustling commercial centers, and from arid deserts to fertile valleys. The Middle East is a diverse and magical region. Learning about the Middle East allows us to peel back the countless layers of history to see how it influences life today. Its culture includes well-preserved empires of the Babylonians and the Phoenicians, who, by the way, are thought to have created the first real alphabet. And I was well advised not to approach this region with any preconceptions, but instead, if you keep your eyes, ears, and mind open, you'll learn so much more. Being at the center of the human experience, the Middle East is where history is written every day. The Middle East is so diverse, and getting around may require your imagination. There are mountains to climb, or climb over. I trekked 5,000 feet up to the top of Mount Sinai to experience the magnificent sunrise. This is the site where God delivered his 10 Commandments to Moses from its summit. There are rivers and seas to cross, like the historic Red Sea. And navigating the waters is essential. Here in the Nile, this boat is called a felucca. Sometimes getting around means you have to ride on the back of a truck, which might be their community bus. There are deserts to cross, like here in Jordan. Best traveled by camel. There are wonderful remote places to explore, even on horseback here in Palmyra, Syria, which hasn't changed in thousands of years. Getting around the colorful villages, bustling marketplaces, and exotic souks is always best by foot. Few places on Earth can match the Middle East's breathtaking World Heritage Sites. Stunning examples of antiquity still tower over ancient cities, once lively with thousands of inhabitants.
Jerash is one of the original cities in the Roman Decapolis. Its engineering was so advanced that large parts of the city have survived.
Discovering the lost city of Petra in southern Jordan is an adventure. I crept through the mile-long Siq, which is a long, narrow gorge among 300-foot-tall rocks. Then suddenly I got my first look at the most remarkable of all of Petra's rock-carved buildings, the treasury. This is where the Nabateans stashed all the gold and jewels they traded.
The mystery of the many pyramids in Egypt is that no one knows exactly why and how they were built and how old they really are. Some think that they're actually twice as old as is commonly believed.
The Sphinx is 50 meters long and 22 meters high. During the Ottoman Empire, the Turks used its face for target practice. That's why its nose and beard were blasted off. And over 1,300 miles from Cairo, on the border of Sudan, is the Temple of Abu Simbel, featuring the colossal statues of Ramses II, dedicated to himself.
In the northern part of the Bekaa Valley is Baalbek, the most impressive classical ruins in Lebanon.
In Jerusalem, the Dome of the Rock is one of the city's most historic and symbolic monuments. It is recognized by Judaism, Christianity, and Islam as the site of Abraham's sacrifice. This is Qumran, Israel, where the Dead Sea Scrolls were found in 1947. A Bedouin shepherd boy was looking for his stray goat one day when he found the texts written on parchment and leather inside old earthenware jars in a cave.
With a population of more than 250,000 in 1st century BC, Ephesus, Turkey was the second largest city in the world.
In northern Syria, near the Turkish border, is Saint Simeon, named after a 5th century eccentric who didn't like being around people, so he erected some pillars to get away from them and spent 40 years living and preaching on top of his pillars. Palmyra is the most important archaeological site in Syria. This is the Tetrapolon, which is a Roman monument with a gate on each of its 4 sides, built on a crossroad. In southern Syria, on the Jordanian border, is Basra, the most well-preserved Greco-Roman amphitheater in existence. Buried and obscured under sand, the 2nd century amphitheater was only uncovered in the 20th century.
Masada is the famous Israeli fortress built by King Herod. This is where 15,000 Romans were about to take over hundreds of Jewish freedom fighters who ultimately had to decide between slavery or suicide.
People in the Middle East live in all kinds of interesting homes with unique backyards.
And some of these cities are home to many refugees which have fled their countries for a safer life. They share their backyard.
Here on the Sea of Galilee, I stayed in a kibbutz, a large agricultural community with a big collective backyard.
Here in the backyard of this kibbutz is a bomb shelter. In many sections of Israel, every building must now have a bomb shelter to protect residents in the event of war.
I was invited to share a meal during Holy Week in the backyard of a large Bedouin family in central Syria. Their kindness stems from thousands of years of codependency of other nomads who relied on each other to survive in the desert. But some Bedouin nomads with strong roots in remote cultures live in very rural, isolated areas with an expansive backyard. as far as the eye can see.
Many families that live in the villages reside right in the souks themselves. Their backyards are usually surrounded by merchants and customers.
Many rural nomadic people need to move from pasture to green pasture, so their backyards are always changing, but their dwelling remains the same as it moves with them. Walking down a street in one of the Middle East cities, you will see all kinds of folks just making a living. But life is a daily struggle for many. Unemployment in many areas is high. Recent protests throughout the Middle East seek economic improvements, especially more jobs. And as refugees from less stable countries in the region have been forced to flee and relocate, finding jobs is even more difficult.
In many areas of the Middle East, some kids, like this boy, leave school early to work to help their parents.
While most Middle Eastern countries are highly dependent on food from abroad, agriculture is one of the largest exports and employers. Yet the Middle East produces less than half of the food and agricultural products it consumes. And surrounded by a modernized culture, the nomads and shepherds carefully and proudly tend to their flocks as they have for thousands of years.
Farmers at the cooperative kibbutz together grow their fresh fruits and vegetables. And this camel looks like he's asking the vendor to have a taste of his delicious bread.
The Middle East, and especially here in Jerusalem, is where three of the world's most prominent religions all began. It's an amazing intersection where Jews, Muslims, and Christians meet. In Lebanon, the Constitution dictates that the president is always Christian, the prime minister is Sunni Muslim, and the parliamentary speaker is a Shia Muslim. The Middle East is home to religious leaders including Abraham, Moses, Jesus, and Muhammad, and therein lies its spiritual significance.
Islam, in its many forms, is the largest religion in the Middle East. The Sunnis and Shia are simply two different sects of Islam. When Muhammad died, Islam was divided over who should succeed him. Two sects resulted because Muhammad had no heir.
Islam is based upon 5 pillars of faith, one of which is taking a pilgrimage to Mecca. My friend in Syria told me it remarkably took his grandfather 1 year to ride a mule to Mecca and another year to return. I came across these Christian pilgrims from Asia who came all the way to Israel to be baptized in the holy Jordan River.
Bar mitzvahs are family ceremonies. The father and son symbolically tie the tefillin containing scriptural passages, becoming bound by heart and soul to the service of God.
Other traditions involve multiple bar mitzvahs, dozens of ceremonies of Jews from all over the world, all taking place at the same time.
But there are other religions in the Middle East too. Many of them are offshoots of a religion, and even combinations of religions.
One of the most interesting is the Druze, an offshoot of Shiite Islam. Their faith has survived mainly because of the secrecy that surrounds it. Not only is conversion to or from the faith prohibited, but only the elite leaders have full access to the religious doctrine, which is contained in 7 holy books that exist only in handwritten copies. This is the shrine of the Baha'i in Haifa, Israel. Their philosophy attempts to unify all faiths, which the Baha'i believe are just different versions of the same basic religious practices.
Many of the famous pharaohs' tombs are buried in Egypt's Valley of the Kings. They believed in a pantheon of gods and in eternal life. That's why their tombs contain treasures that they wanted to take with them after they died.
Because of the deep history that is ever present today in the Middle East, its rich culture shines through its customs and rituals. Most cafes and coffee houses throughout the Middle East are chief social gathering places where mostly men share their hookah or nargila water pipe. Hijabs are worn by most Syrian women and many girls as well. They proudly wear them as a testament to their faith, much like a Christian would wear a cross around her neck.
The abaya is a convenient, traditional garment worn over clothing. The abaya covers the whole body except the face, feet, and hands. It can be worn with a face veil covering all but the eyes.
The red and white keffiyeh scarf is traditionally worn throughout the Middle East to keep out the sun, wind, and sand. The black and white keffiyeh is a symbol of Palestinian heritage. Today, a mosque's minarets have loudspeakers that project the call to prayer 5 times each day. But before electricity, the muezzin would have to climb to the top and shout the call to prayer. Holy Week precedes the pilgrimage to Mecca, called Hajj. Those who are not able to go to Mecca spend this Holy Week feasting with family. In some areas, families that can't afford it buy a sheep, which is sacrificed. 1/3 goes to the farmer, 1/3 goes to the buyer, and the other third goes to the poor.
Shawarma is a popular food throughout the Middle East. Shawarma is a sandwich like wrap of shaved meat placed on a spit and grilled.
Years ago, caravanserais were set up to take care of weary travelers and their animals. The small door in the bottom right is for people, and the big arched door is for horses and camels. In eastern Syria, near the Iraqi border, is an area home to the Baqqara tribe, known for their tattoos on their faces and hands. The tattoo tradition served as their ID in case they ever got lost or died.
Back out into the souks, you'll find all kinds of historic bathhouses, hundreds of years old, called hammam.
Families in the Middle East, just like everywhere else in the world, are extremely close. And they're friendly and caring. And some are all too anxious to introduce you to their family pet. Education is a crucial issue in the region's economic development, and literacy rates in urban areas have risen substantially.
But children in rural areas face more obstacles towards achieving a basic education.
Sometimes girls drop out of school to submit to family pressures to marry or work. However, these numbers are slowly improving. And some young people, like these Israeli girls, join the military.
A greater number of girls and women are studying in madrasas, typically attended by boys. Here in Syria, Muslim men can marry non-Muslims, but Muslim women can only marry Muslim men.
Some marriages are prearranged, and the whole family can get involved in the decision.
And families in the Middle East provide some of the most gracious hospitality I've ever experienced. The Middle East is undoubtedly the most complex region anywhere in the world. There's just no place like it. And because of its position between Africa, Asia, and Europe, the Middle East is the center of the spokes of history. The old and the new, everything converges here. The Middle East is an exotic kaleidoscope of cultures where different customs, religions, and ideas blend, and sometimes collide with one another. There's been conflict and conquest throughout its history, and it continues today. In addition to disputes over land, one of its most significant challenges undoubtedly will be over water. Civil unrest, oftentimes led by the youth, is boiling in many places in the region over economic disparities, especially unemployment. In the Middle East, religion and history are inseparable and has everything to do with how their culture is shaped, which includes traditions, customs, and beliefs. Stir in new religions, add countless wars, mix in new prophets and lots of kings, and you have an ever-changing region that defies description and comprehension. It's so complicated and complex that no two people are likely to see it the same way. In fact, in Israel, they say, put two Israelis in a room and you'll get 3 stories. The countries of the Middle East have so much in common. They have rich historic sites dating back thousands of years. They have diverse geography and beautiful landscapes, from the cedar forests of Lebanon to the shores of the Mediterranean Sea. And from the rolling hills of Turkey to the solitude of a sun-baked desert. But in spite of all the disputes and enormous challenges, people here, just like everyone else, want to live full and normal lives each day, just like you and me. Many children in the Middle East have lived their entire lives surrounded by conflict, and some of them live with war all around them. It's a way of life that most of us cannot possibly understand or even imagine what that must be like. And as I travel around the globe, I see bright-eyed young people that will someday become tomorrow's leaders. I watch these kids everywhere I go in the world. Kids who have not yet fallen victim to bias, prejudice, and misinformation. Kids who are universally innocent, playful, and curious, and who want to create a better world. Like all of us, they too have dreams of a prosperous and peaceful future. And one thing is for sure, youth will play a major role in what's to come. As a visitor to this remarkable region, it becomes clear very quickly how much more there is to know and to understand. Because there is little separation between the past and the present. And I learned it is wise to stand back from the headlines and appreciate without judgment the rich and fascinating mixture of history, tradition, and religion. The people of the Middle East are uniquely standing at the crossroads of history. They are resilient and proud, and what lies ahead is uncertain. Look at the present and you'll find the past. Look at the past and you'll find the future.